It's the final episode of Ren's Training Camp Journal for the 2018 season, and we finally get to some iTunes reviews and some new Patreons. And Ren hangs out with the ladies at a Women in Red event, and we get to hear all about that. All that coming to you and more on today's episode of Ren's Training Camp Journal.
Well, you made me weep, and you made me moan. Well, you caused me to leave, child, my happy home. But someday, baby, you ain't worry my life anymore.
Welcome, listeners and subscribers, to what is now the final episode of Ren's Training Camp Journal. I am not Ren Daxt. I am the host of the Pewtercast, Brent Allen, but I am joined by Ren Daxt. Ren, you made it, buddy. You made it. It's been a long road here over the month of August, but here we are, final episode of Training Camp Journal. How you feeling, man?
I'm good. It was a fun road. I can't believe that you didn't let me do the intro to my final Training Camp Journal of 2018 season, but
Well, I came here and strong-armed you about it.
Actually, I told Brent to do it because it takes me like 6 takes for some reason. I have Brent like staring at me on the screen, and I feel like he's very judgmental, and so it takes me forever. So anyway, I told Brent to do it. What I just said previously was a lie, but yeah, it was it was a fun training camp. I really like these journals, and pretty much I am happy that quote unquote training camp's officially over. Today was the last day of training camp per the organization. Like practices change and players that have homes to go back to can start doing that. Because right after that second preseason game, I think including like fans even that don't go to training camp we're just ready for it to be over.
Right.
Like, okay. Yeah. I'm ready for the game now. And there's nothing really, even if they had like 5 more I could go to, there's nothing really I could point out or say that I haven't said already. So I think the length of it this year was perfect. It was good timing.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we started recording tonight, and it's a little surprising to me. This feels very early for training camp to be over. Because usually, to me, I would think that this would last us all the way through the preseason to the end of the 4th game. But, as we sit here right now, as we record this, we still have 2 preseason games left to go, and camp, quote unquote, is over. So, is it usually, Ren? Is it usually this early? Am I just off on my prediction or my feel of it, my sense of it, or is this early this year for camp?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I felt like it was early, but then the more I sort of thought about it and talked about it and said it out loud, I felt more like I think, they did this last year too. And they've probably done it every year. It's just we really weren't paying that much attention to, like they didn't announce it like final day of training camp. It's not like it was all over Twitter. Camp's going to go, quote unquote, camp's going to go on like it never changed, like it never stopped. They're still going to practice every single day just about, and then do walkthroughs day before the game and, do all that stuff. It's just as far as like I said, they're changing practice times, no more, open practices for the fans, so they're sort of shutting it down and circling the wagons for the start of the season.
Yeah. And you know what, if that helps them get ready to play well during the season, then hey, all for it. But, I will miss the access of getting into camps and it's because the thing about training camp is it's not just getting to go see our beloved Buccaneers. It certainly is that, I think, at the first part of training camp, but as training camp wears on, a lot of it, for me anyway, was about getting to be, especially on the open days, getting to be out there with our fellow fans and getting to meet several of our listeners out there, getting to make new friends and all that. So just kind of, almost the camaraderie of enjoying, Buccaneers football without it actually being the season. Was one of the things that I think I found I liked a whole lot this year about training camp.
Yeah. Even today, like the first safe camp, I would have talked to nobody.
Right.
Like, my eyes are laser focused on the field and who's where and who's playing what and who's the goal line, defensive line and who's playing right. Like all those questions we had have pretty much been answered. There's injuries that pop up here and there and change around who actually is getting playing time during training camp. But we can go through, all the starting positions and tell you with certainty, probably, except for maybe two, like who's going to start. And I bet our guesses would probably be right as well.
Sure.
So all these questions we had, are dying to know the answer day one, have been answered probably for about a week now. And so
and we also well, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. The reason I just wanted to start that is because that's what I did today. Like I saw, I'm calling him Jimmy Jam now. James Big Money Hill.
Yeah.
Big Money Hill from Mr. Bucks Nation. I was just going to go find a seat, and where I picked, he just happened to be sitting right there. And basically what I did was sit there and talk to James while I, kept, sort of a half eye on practice because, the ones are still the ones and the twos are still the twos,
right.
and they're running the ball and they're throwing the ball. So
yeah, it certainly. Sorry, I forget what I was going to say before that, but yeah, it's cool. I like getting to. I'll tell you something that it felt like we had a lot less of this year, at least compared to last year, and that was interaction with the Bucks media corps. If you remember last year, a lot of times the media guys would come and sit in the stands and, sit under that tent. And it seemed like there was a lot more just rubbing shoulders. And, you could just look up and all of a sudden there's Roy Cummings sitting next to you, or the Joe Bucks fans guys, or the Pewter Report guys, or something like that. It didn't really feel like there was that kind of rubbing shoulders with those guys this year, especially on the open days.
Well, because there's nowhere to sit.
Right.
Outside there's nowhere to sit. So their best view is right in front of the rope where the people were sort of stationed off at.
Right.
And they got sort of like a 5-yard buffer area where they could go. And since there was no shade or nowhere to sit, that's where they stayed. And then when you went inside, they kind of had them corralled down at the 20-yard line at the top two.
Oh, did they? See, I never even saw them once we got inside. Like all those times.
That's why
a
lot of their videos are I don't want to say they're bad, but they're from far away. Because if the Bucks are practicing the other way, they're like 80 yards from the action.
Okay.
And they put some dividers, sort of like movie theater line dividers, and then they printed out on a piece of paper, said media in big bold letters, and then laminated it, and then taped them to the bleachers. Okay. But I think, because I saw it today. The guys that don't have to run like a stationary camera, like MOR, Channel 13's out there, which is Fox, and Channel 8's out there, and then Spectrum Cable's out there. Like those guys have to set up in that area. The first couple of weeks, like all the video coming from Pewter Report and Greg Allman and those guys were in that area. And today I noticed that they don't follow that anymore.
Right.
they're like, I'm not going to sit up there anymore. They just go and sit where they want to and move around and stuff, which is better for us in the long run.
Sure. So, and to completely contradict what I just said, at the same time, you and I, at least, I feel like got more interaction with those guys simply because of the media credentials that we were able to obtain, and I think just another year of developing relationships with those guys. When they see us, they know us, and we know them, and we at least have that speaking terms thing. So, not that anybody goes to training camp to see the media guys. I just remember it was, thinking about the differences between last year and this year, especially. That was one of them. So, Ren, as we're kind of wrapping this up, this is really that wrap up show of Training Camp Journal. why don't we jump in real quick? Well, okay. First of all, let's finish this conversation. Do you have any other kind of final overall thoughts of training camp? And then when we get off of that, I want to get into actually these last couple of days. Certainly have had some news that have come out, and kind of interested to see how that's going to affect us, moving forward through the preseason and into the regular season. So, but first, any kind of final thoughts on training camp as a whole as we wrap up the journal here?
I guess overall training camp, it was run well. I think it was run a little better than it was last year, but there really wasn't much, I guess, maneuvering or logistics to last year's camp. It's just once you get in, you sit down. That you sort of don't have to mess with the people anymore. And here, they would come out and put up signs like "Start moving into the indoor facility." I don't like no shade outside. Like, if you want to put up bleachers, that's cool, but I think that you should provide. I know a lot of NFL teams don't. You can see, you see on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, you can see that a lot of these teams don't provide shade for their fans, but
they're not in Tampa, Florida either, right? Exactly.
They're not in Florida. So, I mean, that's the only improvement I would say about outside. Indoor, the facility is great. It's simple to. There's nothing that's sort of out of like, oh, this is very inconvenient for me as a fan. Nothing like that. There was always plenty of seating, so sort of capping those tickets off, I think, was a good idea. And everything they did with the people cheer, like they hire those like cheer squads, not the cheerleaders themselves, and then they had like. Cool
those are the same guys. Those are the same guys we see in the stadium during the games and stuff too.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of those same guys.
They had some cool things this year where they had like a border, and you stick your face in it. It said like Training Camp Buccaneers 2018 around it, which was nice. Big Gerald McCoy head. I noticed that they had a big Chris Godwin head out there.
Oh, really? I didn't see that one.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's always been like Gerald McCoy. Obviously, not obviously, but hey, Jameis's big head wasn't there this year. Okay.
They had Mike Evans' head.
Okay,
His big old head was out there, yeah.
I was about to say, I was surprised I didn't see Mike Evans' head, but yeah, so they had a Chris Godwin head out, and they make it fun for the fans. Like I said, just comparing it to last year, the shade is no shade. I think is the only thing that's lacking. Not that it's a problem, because you can always go inside, and they're very gracious, before the Bucs get in there, about letting people run around the field, take pictures, kids run around, throw the football. Like, they have no problem with that whatsoever. So it really is a fun experience. And of course, the kids zone was still there, and the merchandise tent. So overall, I think it was an A+ experience, and I think it was better than last year. But if you just want to take outside and compare that to last year, that I think it just falls a little short, because it's hot, man.
Yeah.
And there's you can't see. Like, if it's a really packed day, if you're not in the first like 2 or 3 rows, you just can't see.
Right. So you stand around in the back and actually just start to talk. Is essentially what happens. Yeah.
And then you realize the indoor facility is open, and you go in there and sit down.
Right. There was. I 100% agree with you with all that, and I definitely feel like they upped the game as far as the family entertainment value. We had that episode a couple shows back where we talked about where I got to bring my family down and get that side of the experience of it. You're absolutely right with being able to go in and play on the field. I mean, just the idea of being able to walk on the holy ground, right? Like the turf, like, oh, this is where they are. Like they really will. As long as the players aren't there, they'll let you go play. It's not.
There's no restrictions whatsoever.
Right. There's really not. In fact, my son, he had those beads that they threw, and he was trying to shoot them up over the field goal.
Goalpost.
The goalpost, and wound up getting like 2 sets of beads tangled in the net right behind it, and they had to like bring the ladder out and get them untangled. And they were cool. Like, and I say that to say, it didn't bother them. Like, they were just, okay, whatever, it's fine. So, kudos to the Buccaneers. I also 100% agree with you about the shade and the not being able to see. And given the way that the outdoor place was, they had the mulch where they normally would put the bleachers. And then they had grass. And I don't understand why they can't, at the very least, where the mulch is put up tents just to provide shade for no other reason than just provide shade. That can't be that expensive, and they can't be that worried about money given what they just paid for that indoor facility, or maybe they are. But even having some sort of a graded area to be able to see over the people in front of you, certainly would also be nice. Less about having a place to sit and just more about being able to see those places. But outside of those two things, I agree with you, man. I think this was a cool experience.
And those are small things.
They are. Yeah, they really are.
And for the last thing that I didn't like, I guess, or I have something to say that could have been better. I liked it better last year when Casey and Scott actually had guests on their show.
Oh, for the show they did during training camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good idea of streaming it live where they'd walk out of the way and you'd see some of the players, especially for out-of-town people, where you get, you're trying to pick up any little bit you could find about what's going on the team and who's starting where and who's hurt. Like that, I thought that was really great. But, honestly, after like the fourth time of answering the same, is Villaveda coming back? How are the safeties? It was the same like 6-7 questions every single day from the fans, because now they're taking questions on Facebook Live. But I really enjoyed like the conversation they had with Mike Greenberg last year, John Spytek. Like those are some of the things that I miss. And so like I said, we're getting in. We're really nitpicking now, and maybe I could be in the minority on that. Maybe everyone loved the new way that they did the live pregame show from training camp.
Well, Rin, the only thing I can say about that is write some of those names down and let's try to get them here on the Pewtercast. Let's fill a hole. That'd be a cool conversation to have with Mike Greenberg. I hear it coming up over the course of the season. So, all right. Well, that's kind of training camp as a whole. I think overall we're very pleased with it. We're certainly in that spot now with training camp, and I think we have been for at least a solid week, maybe a little bit longer. Where it's almost pointless to play the who's lining up with who game at this point, because you have injuries, and then you have guys taking Veterans Days, and you have guys that are like, oh, what, you got a really bad mosquito bite? Okay, you're going to sit out for the next week. They have, or hey, you just go experiment and let's see what you look like when you're playing. You undrafted rookie. Let's see what you look like up against Gerald McCoy. See if you can do something. Like, there's those little things that don't. They're not. You can't read too much into it at all.
Yeah, for example, like, Buccaneer fans are very concerned about how many weeks Donovan Smith is going to miss, right? Mm-hmm. And when they did the walkthrough that I was there for, the Women of Red event that we'll talk about later, they had Lidkey there,
Right.
But I didn't want to tweet that out because they didn't want any like video or tweets sort of during that, from the press during that time.
Sure.
Give away trade secrets. But today it was the same thing. But then you get there today, like Marpet and Benenocht are not practicing, but they're not hurt. It was like what you said, one of those Veterans Days. So the offensive line had like Dotson and Jensen and then fill in the blank. Yeah. And those were the ones. So it's not to the point where they're, like you said,
hey, how'd the offensive line look today? Huh? We're going to dominate coming season? Oh, what's going on there? Huh?
Yeah, I have no idea because they don't tackle to the ground in the run game.
Exactly.
It's totally agree.
All right, so let's move into all of that said of almost the pointlessness of talking about the last couple of days here in training camp. Let's talk about those. You just mentioned, I think, the two biggest storylines coming out of the last couple of days is Donovan Smith and Justin Evans went down with an injury. As we're recording this, as far as we know, the Buccaneers are expected Donovan to be out. It's a knee injury, 2 to 4 weeks, which could put him back in time for the New Orleans game. It may push a week or two into the regular season, and that's what they're hopeful for. Who knows what it actually could turn into. And then Justin Evans, a lot seemed to be made of the fact that he was quote-unquote carted off the field. But then I think it was Carmen Vitale was like, yeah, he pretty much just walked over to the Gator, sat down in the front seat. They drove him back, and he got out of the Gator and walked into the building. Like, it wasn't so much a carting off the field kind of thing, I guess, technically.
It was the same thing with Vita Vea with his calf.
Yeah.
You know, like if I think Villa could actually play if they wanted him to, or, you know, if it was like a playoff game or something, Villa would be playing, but you know, they're taking extra precautionary with him. And I saw Justin Evans today and he looked fine. Like no brace, no nothing. He's walking around, you know. The first time I saw him, like he was on one knee and sort of like juggling the ball. Like he looked like absolutely no pain whatsoever. So,
but he wasn't practicing though.
No, he was not practicing.
Yeah.
No. But I don't. They'll probably hold him out for the Detroit game. But once again, I think like if it was Sunday, I think Justin Evans would go.
Yeah.
And about Donovan Smith, I just have a feeling since he has been so durable, and the only time that he's missed was the second half of one game. He missed some plays where he got hurt, but he was back starting the next week. And he's actually gone on record pretty recently talking about how he prides himself on playing through, you know, these nagging injuries, minor injuries. You know, you've heard it once, you've heard it 100 times. Like halfway through the season, no one's 100% anymore. Like everyone's got something they're nursing. If I was a betting man, which I am, I would put my money on Donovan Smith being there for New Orleans.
Fair enough. You heard it here, folks. Go to Vegas, take it there. You probably put something down on it. They'll probably take that bet somewhere. Yeah. Someone will.
I'm not betting on it.
So with that, Ren, anything, you know, a couple of things that I've heard, and I didn't get to. I was going to be there today. I had planned on it. Was actually on my way down last night, and detours and stuff disrupted me, so I wound up coming back to Jacksonville. But so out of these last two, is there any, like I've heard, like I think Rojo had a good couple of days. I think Justin Watson had a good couple of days. It sounds like. Any insights, anything that might tip the scales one way or the other as we kind of round the corner on this?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one day one guy flashes, one day next guy flashes. You know, Ronald Jones had flashed in training camp pretty much all the way up to the Miami game, and then had some good practices up to who did we just play?
Titans.
The Titans, they talked about him, when they were in Nashville, and he hasn't shown up yet. So, like I said, we're at to the, not to be like, nope, nothing new to report. I mean, but how many times, and I was talking to this about Jimmy Jam today, it's like no one really cares about a video of Deshaun Jackson catching a deep ball anymore. We've seen it for 4 weeks now.
Right.
That's all people care about right now is who's hurt and who's back.
Right.
Okay, who's hurt today and who came back today? Who got hurt today and who came back today? That's all people care about. Because if you're in it as deep as we are, and you are because you listen to this podcast, then you already have in your mind who the starters are. And you know that this person being out, that means that person has to play. And you're rolling through the scenarios in your head for this Detroit game. So no one cares about seeing Mike Evans catch a ball over the middle anymore. No one cares about seeing Rojo squirt up the middle for 3 yards. No one cares. We've seen hundreds of videos now, and it's time. It's time to go.
And the reality that none of it matters has all said. None of it counts. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't count. We're still at this point about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks away from anything actually counting.
We had some transactions.
I've got the transactions here. The big thing is we waived a couple guys that nobody's ever heard of, but we claimed off of waivers the defensive tackle Adam Reth from the Philadelphia Eagles. So we get another Eagle coming in. I'm not sure if he was a part of the Super Bowl team last year or not. But joining Bo Allen and Jim Curry.
No, he's a rookie.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was playing college ball last year, and he's been in their camp.
Okay.
And I guess they let him go. I think that's how it went. Yeah, he's a rookie. Yeah. So he wasn't with the team last year.
So we, in order to do that, we waived a guy that you've never heard of before. We also looks like we signed a guy, Gerald Worthy.
Yeah, well, both of these guys are. What's interesting about Reth is that if he was at the combine, he would have placed like 6 in the bench press. So he's a strong guy. Like
I heard about that. Yeah.
He would have been behind the people like Quentin Nelson and Villa. And Villa, by the way, when I was sort of like looking Adam Reth. There's only been 18 people that's put up over 40 reps, and Via Veda is one of them. So, people talk about his strength. You can prove it there. But Adam Reth also runs like a sub 540.
Wow.
So he's strong and he's fast. So,
yeah.
I mean, he didn't get invited to the combine. He had to do his pro day. Like everyone, like Justin Watson had to do, where the scouts had to come to him. But I don't have high hopes for him, but he looks pretty good on paper.
Right.
As far as athlete wise. Yeah, Jarrell Worthy, he was a second round pick by the Packers. He later, I believe, got traded to the Patriots for like a seventh round pick or something like that. So, the Patriots thought they could do something with him. They're pretty well known for taking off the Misfits, the Island of Misfits toys, and getting a good season, 1 or 2 seasons out of them. Mm-hmm. But he very quickly became expendable, and they got him out of there almost right away. Most recently, he's been at Buffalo. He played some games at Buffalo, and now he's here. I saw a little bit of him today. He looked okay. He beat the guard a couple of times to get the sack on the the one-on-one drills. Mm-hmm. That being so far behind, and I think and same thing with Adam Reth. He just might be a body move. I mean, mm-hmm. He got almost every award, not almost every award possible, but he was highly touted. Obviously, he was a second-round pick, but this was a guy that was going to do some things, and I just don't. Since he wasn't on our team, we really don't know how it didn't transition from college to here. But this is I think it's 4th or 5th stop in like 3 years. So I don't expect much out of Worthley.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually his 6th stop since 2000. I mean, he was drafted in 2012, so he's not young either. He's been around for, I guess this is going on his 6th year. And basically just kind of looking at it, looks like he's been picked up, put on practice squads, cut, put on practice squad, cut, put on practice squad, cut, put on practice squad. And then they did that thing like at the end of the season, they activate him at the very end of the season where it doesn't affect any kind of eligibility, or they're just injured and they need somebody. And he played. And then it looks like he did. You're right. It does look like he played last year as well. But he's been off of a team since November of last year, so mid-season of last year. So I'm with you. I wouldn't expect much from him, but we'll see. We'll see what he does. That Reth guy though is, I think, very, very interesting. The other guy that we have, we signed a new tight end, Matt Weiser, after waiving an injured Colin Jeter. Who has already appeared on some 53-man rosters as one of our practice squad guys. So I guess that's probably not happening, at least not until later in the season.
He's a Buffalo Bull. That's about it.
Yeah.
He played for the University of Buffalo. They're the Bulls. I think he was in San Diego, and they released him. So once again, it's just somebody to play preseason game 4.
Yeah. Essentially, we're just churning the bottom. Now, let me ask you this, Ren, as we talk about preseason game 3 and 4 coming up here. Do you feel like that our third preseason game, the one coming up here on Friday, against the Lions, is this going to be the typical? Usually that third preseason game is the quote unquote dress rehearsal. Do you feel like that's really going to be what this game is for us? Because this game feels, to me, kind of approaching it a little bit more like a 4th preseason game where, we're going to go out and just try to play guys and not get injured and get out and not worry too much about it. What do you think?
I think they've got a chart and they want to follow it about reps and what they're trying to get done. I mean, like you said, this is the dress rehearsal. Mm-hmm. And I tried to ask I guess a little insight here to like today I got to be credentialed as well as the other night with the Women of Red, but I was actually there to cover the Junior Buccaneers, which we'll talk about in a episode coming up. So I didn't feel like I should ask questions because I sort of didn't want to push my practice was going on, like the end of practice and the beginning of this event were mixing, for like 5-10 minutes. But while they were getting set up for the event that I was supposed to be covering, Dirk Cutter was talking, so I went over there and listened to him. And then I turn around and there's like 2 people talking to Todd Mumkin. Mm-hmm. like in the indoor facility. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go listen to this because we haven't heard from Todd Monken since, when everybody reported. There's that one day where all the assistants talk. We haven't heard from him since then. And then within a minute, everybody's there. I mean, everybody. Name somebody. He was there. Like they were there because it was time to talk to Todd Monken. And I was thinking in my head, here's the question I want to ask him: is this team has really been thin at tackle with Wester going down, Boozer going down.
Garner.
Yeah, Cole Garner down. Now Donovan Smith is down. We're not really sure how much Dotson's going to play, even though he started last week against the Titans. But I think he came out before the whole starting offensive line came out, so they're easing him back in. And I wanted to ask him, like, we're so short at tackle, and now Donovan Smith is out. Does this anyway going to affect the things you're trying to get done against the Lions, as a play caller? Like, are you going to have to change your play calling to be able to protect, like, your quarterback during this Lions game? And it's going to come for you having to sacrifice getting things that you want to be able to get done and the reps you want and the things you want to do against the Lions. But like I said, I wasn't there to cover the team that day, quote unquote, and I didn't want to push it. But I also thought it was funny is it's like I'm standing there, and like Scott Reynolds and Rock Raleigh both sort of just like shouldered me out of the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, for me to, I was like a foot and a half from Monken, and by the time the guy's like, okay, guys, he's got to go, and everyone's like, thanks, coach, thanks, Todd, and he walks away, I was probably 6 feet away from him.
Oh, wow.
Like, I just kept getting like pushed back. At one point, you see somebody like a cat like wiggle through and pop up right in front in the middle, and it was Jenna Lane. She's like, whoop, and she asked like her 3 or 4 questions, and then like back out just the way she came. She just like no one moved. She just like ducked down. I mean, she's only she's 5'2", 5. She's tiny. But so it was funny to watch her just wiggle in and wiggle out. But it was cool to talk about Monken. I was going to talk about it today, but by the time it started to get really hard to hear what he was saying, it was almost impossible to hear the question.
Well, when you're 6 feet away.
Yeah, and I didn't want to muscle my way in there because technically I really wasn't supposed to be over there. But then I wrote some things down. But when I got home, and been looking at Twitter today before we got on, like everything's been covered already. Like everybody's already thrown it out there. So, but that was a little behind the scenes story of how I got muscled out of the way today.
By Jenna Lane.
Oh, it wasn't by Jenna Lane. She anyway.
That's how we're gonna write it though.
She's like running water, man. She just like
Jenna Lane pushes Rendext around.
Pushes me down.
So, all right. Well, man, is there anything else from training camp here over the last couple days, or shall we put a button on Ren's training camp journal for 2018?
Yeah, let's put a button on it. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. From the downloads, it looks like you guys did.
Yeah.
I'm hoping next year that a team comes to us. Like, there's no more stadium renovations for the first 2 weeks, and a team comes to Tampa. Because if that happens, I think the coverage will be, I think it'll be a lot better. And it'll sort of recharge the batteries right when you feel like you're about to fall off a cliff with covering training camp, and comes like another team, and you get to see your guys go up against other players, and they're I don't want to say they're not trying but it ratchets up the intensity for sure. And I think that'd be fun to cover.
Yeah, that'd certainly be a whole lot of fun to cover. So, all right, Ren. Well, hey, man, really great work. And to everyone out there who's been listening and following along with the Training Camp Journal, and you've taken the time to bump into Ren or bump into me or shoot us an email or shoot us a tweet or whatever, just kind of thanking us for it or saying how good of a job that we've been doing. I want to say thank you, because that kind of feedback matters a ton for us and kind of letting us know if we're on the right track with what we're doing here. So thank you for that. And, a big thank you to our friends over at the Buccaneers for allowing us to be credentialed for the times that we were. And we look forward to continuing that relationship. and what that may mean in the future. Well, Ren, why don't we go ahead and transition now? We've actually got a couple of new iTunes reviews that we've been holding on throughout the entire summer, and we've got a few new patrons I want to give a shout out to. And then you also got to be at this Women of Red event, and I want to hear all about it. I was supposed to be there. I didn't get to go. I'm super jealous, and I want to hear some of those insights. So we'll do that right on the backside of this break. Welcome back to the final episode of Ren's Training Camp Journal. And Ren, all summer long, we've been receiving, we've had emails that have come in. We've had a couple new iTunes reviews, and we've kind of held on to them for a little bit. So why don't we go ahead and get to those, kind of our infamous fan interaction segment that we have here. But before we get into that, I do want to take just a moment and give a quick shout out to some new patrons that have joined us here over the last couple of weeks. Brad K., Khalil J., Phil S., Trevor in Orlando, and Walter S. Have all joined our Patreon community. So I want to say welcome to those guys. Guys, thanks for supporting the show. Matters huge. That community over there is growing, and really loving some of the interactions and stuff that we're having over on the Patreon page. If you guys want to check out what that's all about, you go over to patreon.com/thepewtercast. For a small recurring monthly donation to the show, you get some kickbacks. Of course, the more you give, the more kickbacks you have. In fact, one of those kickbacks is a hangout with Ren and I, and we've got that scheduled that'll be coming up here in the next week. And for everyone who's at that level, we'll be letting you guys know so you can get that on your calendar. And that's really just a time where we get to hang out, and we'll kind of do a virtual Google Hangout and talk about whatever you want to talk about, whether it's Bucks football or not Bucks football. It's
PUBG.
PUBG. Yeah, we'll talk about all that. Star Trek. You want to find out about our other podcasts that we have? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about if you want to talk about how hot it is, because that's what we do during training camp. We'll talk about that. So, but that is coming up.
Not boring,
right? And then we've also got some of the gear and things like that's all going out as well. So thank you guys for joining our patrons. With that, Ren, we've got a couple of iTunes reviews. I'm really excited to get to these. We've been hanging on these. And the first one comes in from Eric Cullison, who gives us a 5-star rating, and he titles it, "We differ in opinions, but I appreciate the effort." Eric says to us, he says, "I started listening to this podcast about halfway through last season. It was an instant cast, in which I thought was a pretty cool concept. It was, of course, after a loss, and I got about 5 minutes in, and I said, 'This Ren dude is defending Doug Martin?' I immediately turned off the pod and never came back. But I decided to come back and listen. While there have been many contrasting opinions between what you guys say and my own views, it is an entertaining podcast, and it's always good to listen to a different viewpoint."
Yeah, Eric and I have started DMing. He's out in San Diego, and he does. God, what is he he's in the military,
mm-hmm.
and his job is like to find patterns in things.
Okay.
Sort of like to pick up on trends. And he has some articles that he wants me to read, and I feel terrible. I still haven't done it. And we're going to discuss that. I know. Don't shake your head. And we're going to discuss that. But yeah, I mean, thanks for bringing it back, or for coming back, I should say. And if you end up being right, that was for sure. I kept saying, Doug Martin's coming back. Doug Martin. He's our best back. But by halfway through the season, and especially the last quarter of the season,
mm-hmm.
it was really glaring apparent that they weren't opening holes for him, or he didn't have it, or both. And
mm-hmm.
I kind of think it's both.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that last year. I don't remember exactly at what point in the season, but I think I came in and said, "Hey, I'm getting off this Doug Martin train." Because when I went and looked at it, it was like 55-45. Like 55, they weren't opening holes for him, but 45% was him just not doing what he needed to do. So I think that's what it was. You guys go back, listen to it. It's in the feeds. We broke down some film and looked at all that. So, but you know what? Doug Martin's not on the team anymore, and we have Peyton Barber as our number 1 back now. So,
but thanks for listening. Thanks for the review.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. Thank you so much. Next iTunes review comes from Big Bucks Mama, and I'm going to assume this is a she. She says, this is the best Bucks podcast there is, with a 5-star rating. And she says, this is hands down my favorite Bucks podcast. The media podcasts are redundant and all starting to sound the same. This one is from a fan's perspective, and they don't waste time trying to pretend to be unbiased. Brent and Ren are funny, intelligent, well-informed, and their opinions are worth hearing. If there's one downfall, I'd say it's that they don't release enough episodes. I'd take one every day if they can do it. Keep up the good work, and go Bucks.
Thanks, Big Mama. Everything she said in that is true, except for not enough episodes. When was that?
This one was back in May, so this was before we hit certainly the training camp journal. We were still at our every other week kind of a pace.
Right. Yeah, which is fair. All I can say is strap in, Big Mama, because 4 a week will be coming very shortly. Less than a month.
2.5 weeks. So thank you for that. Actually, I like this next iTunes review. This one actually came to us in August, so right in the middle of Ren's training camp diary. This is from Jewbear1933. It says, great podcast, but we only got 4 stars, Ren. Aw. Here's what he says. I recently started listening to this podcast and even became a patron. Woohoo! Thank you. After listening to a few episodes. If you're a Bucks fan, the content is fantastic. The only reason I gave it 4 instead of 5 is because it's too hard for me to keep up with the amount of episodes.
Those reviews are back to back.
Those reviews are back to back.
It would have been better if Big Mama it wouldn't have been, but it would have been funnier if Big Mama gave us a 4. The only reason I'm giving it a 4 is because they don't put out enough episodes. The next review. The only reason I'm giving it a 4 is because they put out too many episodes. Well, you can't please anybody, but thank you for listening, and sorry you can't keep up. There are a lot of Bucks podcasts out there, but the easiest way to do that is eliminate all the other ones from your rotation and just listen to us, and then it becomes a lot easier. So that's my advice to you, Jew Bear.
And, we talk about a lot of the other Bucks podcasts, so, you'll catch that with us.
There you go.
So anyway, but yeah, thank you guys for all of those reviews. If you guys want to do that, we always ask iTunes reviews. You go over to iTunes, leave us a review. You can rate us. We will make sure that we read that on air. And if you don't listen to us on iTunes, that's okay. Just go on over to iTunes. You probably have an account there anyway. Leave us a review and then go back to listening to us on whatever podcasting platform you prefer. That's real helpful. That just kind of raises us in the ranks a little bit. And it's actually really helped. As you start typing in the Pewtercast or looking for Bucks, I've noticed that we are starting to populate higher and higher. We have been populating higher and higher in those search fields. So that is directly because of all the iTunes reviews that you guys have been leaving us. So, all right, Ren, we had 2 emails come in that just had a couple of questions, so I want to run through those real quick and then get to this Women in Red event. The first one comes from Women of Red. Okay, there we go.
Yes, yes.
Probably have to do what?
I was correct. I was corrected on that.
There you go.
The night of the event.
All right. Our first one comes from our friend Dimash, who is also a patron. Hi, Dimash. He says, hey, guys, is Ryan Smith's roster spot in jeopardy? It's one thing for him to be overly targeted, but to be getting smoked by I think this came in after the Dolphins game. To be getting smoked by the legendary Dave Fales to Isaiah Ford connection multiple times, that's a problem. David Foles, I think is what that was, or someone. It says, with the glut of corners, do you see any chance that he's jettisoned to make way for the younger crop? The team isn't overly invested, draft or money to make him safe. Demetrios.
Is that what D stands for? It's Demetrios.
There you go.
Demetrios.
Yeah.
Dimash. No, his spot's there, but he is the 5th best corner, or in the rotation, I would say now.
So wait, you think his roster spot's in jeopardy, or it's not?
I don't think it's not in jeopardy, but he's not going to be getting on the field unless there's a lot of injuries. Like, I think if the first cornerback goes down, I think Vernon will stay outside, and they'll bring in MJ Stewart in the slot with Carlton Davis on the other side. It looks like it's set as Grimes and Vernon as a nickel and Carlton Davis III as the outside corner.
Okay.
That's what it looks like for me, as sort of like the starting nickel package. And then, like I said, if whoever goes down, if Grimes or Carlton goes down, I think Vernon will stay outside and they'll move MJ Stewart. So now that's four people.
Mm-hmm.
That's four corners, and then that puts Ryan Smith fifth.
Right.
And so I don't think there's anybody on the team that's better than him. Like who's left? Like Javian Elliott, but Javian Elliott can't play outside.
Right.
There's he might be a better nickel, but he can't play outside. He's not an outside corner. Outside corners are hard to come by, and yeah, he hasn't, I guess, blossomed into what we were hoping. He was a late round pick. He was switching positions a lot. He switched. He went from safety to corner in college, and he got here and he went back to safety, and then like a year on the practice squad. No, he wasn't on the practice squad. But a year, going up against Mike Evans in scout teams, they decided to put him at corner. He got in because of injuries last year, and it was rough. And Dimash said that Miami game was rough too.
Mm-hmm. It has continued to be rough.
It has continued to be rough, and so the improvement that you'd hope you'd see isn't there yet. But if I had to bet, I would say he will make the team, but he'll be the fifth. He's the fifth corner in I guess the depth chart, if you will.
You think we got 6 corners?
It depends. This is going to be really interesting. I really can't wait to do this 53-man roster, and I think we should do it immediately, as soon as we can after the Detroit game.
Okay.
Because, we've been talking about this for weeks. Are we going to keep how many defensive linemen are we going to take? It's all depends on what you need and what you need for special teams and then it's going to come into play about fear of losing guys, 5 or 6 wide receivers, 3 or 4 or maybe 5 running backs, 8, 9, 10 defensive linemen, 5 or 6 corners, this and you can't keep 6 corners, 10 defensive linemen, 5 running backs and 6 wide receivers. You can't.
If this team has 5 running backs on this roster and 3 quarterbacks. So, all right. And something, we do have kind of an extra roster spot those first 3 weeks with Jameis because his suspension won't count against our roster. So that is something to also consider when we do that. All right, moving on. And I agree with you, Ren. We'll do that show pretty quickly after the Detroit game. Our next last question comes in. David Mays, he says, hello. Where do you see Jacquizz Rodgers fitting in after the mind-numbing pick of Ronald Jones, who they now have to play? Where does Quiz fit in?
Well, I don't think it's a mind-numbing pick. I mean, yeah, I've talked about this last pod where as far as all of the all the drafted players and all the free agencies, he's disappointed the most. Mm-hmm. But he hasn't got a ton of work in preseason games, and we don't know how he's picking up and how he is in the classroom. We don't know where exactly he's standing on picking up pass protection, which seems to be the biggest hurdle to get on the field for Dirk Cutter as a back. So, yeah, he's been disappointing, but they talked to us on the Pewter Nation podcast, and it was something I was thinking too. Once again, I have to keep learning this lesson. If you think of something, say it, because now I have to sort of give credit to Pewter Nation podcast because I said it first. But they should just give the ball to Ronald Jones like 20 times the next 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like just see what, like, you got to get him rolling. And if you have to feed him the ball 15, 20 times against Detroit and sit Peyton Barber, or you have to, for both games, you got to get him rolling. Where does Jacquizz Rodgers fit in? As of right now, he's the number 2 back. Yeah. He just is, because he's got Dirk Cutter's trust. He can pick up pass protection, he can catch the ball, and he's going to get. He's sort of like Peyton Barber light. Mm-hmm. Not as explosive Peyton, not as powerful as Peyton, not as quick as Peyton, but does everything good. Does everything well. You don't have to fear about him messing up a blitz pickup and getting a quarterback killed. You don't have to worry about him dropping a pass if it's 3rd and 3 and you swing it out to him trying to get a first down. You don't have to worry about him. He's not going to win the game for you, but you don't have to worry about him. And then you got Ronald Jones, and like I said last week, I think Charles Sims' injury pretty much has put him off the roster as a running back. And then I really think the last running back spot is between Wilson and Dare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll certainly be an interesting spot to watch as we get in through that. So, all right, well, I want to thank everybody who wrote in emails, and if you wrote one in over the off season, we didn't get to it. Our apologies. We're certainly we're in that spot where we're starting to get back on our regular schedule of things. So you guys send those in to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We'll make sure we get to those during our weekly interactions segments that we do. So, well, Ren, you were also able to be at an event as we record this. I think it was last night. It was the Women of Red event that was also combined with a walkthrough similar to the premium walkthrough that I got to attend a couple weeks ago. So
right.
I can't wait to hear all that. Let's take a quick break. And on the backside, I want to hear all the insights that you get from that as we round out today's show.
Am I seeing what I think I see? Or all my eyes playing tricks on me? 'Cause what I see don't make no sense. Looking so good standing over that fence. Earth, Venus, and broad daylight. The goddess of love is in my sight. The woman in red. The woman in red. Like fire when she's going straight to my head. The woman in red. The woman in red. I settled for nothing less than her instead.
All right, Ren. Well, here we are kind of rounding out the show here, and Women of Red. This was an event that we had received an email, I don't know, a while ago, and was able to work with the Buccaneers. Actually wound up getting media access to this event to be able to go in and cover it really from the fan aspect. This was really a true fan event. And I want to hear all about this, but I've heard of Women of Red. Ren, for anyone out there who might be a little bit like me going, I'm not really sure what all that really is. What do you know about Women of Red, and what was this event really that they had? Because it was more than just a walkthrough. They had a bunch of stuff going on with it.
Yeah, this is the fourth year they've done it, and I remember seeing the first one, on Buccaneers.com, or maybe it was their mobile app, about this Women of Red event, and there was like a little rundown of all the stuff you're going to get to do, and it was like there's going to be a Q&A with Jason Light, there's going to be Q&A with the players, you'd be able to put on like the quarterback helmet or the Levante David's helmet and hear what like a call sounds like in the helmet from the press box or from
The one with the green dot.
Yeah, the green dot helmet.
Yeah.
And there was other things, and I was like, man, that's really cool. But it says Women of Red, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going. And then I remember they put out an article, and they were interviewing people that were there, and it was like, what do you like about the event? And there was this, that, and the other thing. Well, what you didn't like about the event, and overwhelmingly the answer was like, too many dudes. Like, there's too many guys here. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm never going to this then. I mean, and that's the reason I stayed away the first time. It was like, it didn't say no men allowed, but it certainly didn't promote for men to go.
Yeah, I thought it was real weird. Like, I got the email to come to Women of Red, like, as a fan, and I was like, but I'm not a woman, like, right. and my wife, I don't know that she would be all about that. She might be, I don't know. But I got the email, and then even looking at some of the pictures from last night, some of the ones you tweeted out and some of the ones the other people did, it certainly seemed like there were its own fair share. There certainly, it looked like the vast majority there were women, but
for sure, like it was only 3% guys, and that might be high.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it looked like a lot more than that from the pictures that I saw. Like it looked like it was probably 50-50 to me. Just looking at the pictures.
No. A lot. If like of all the guys, like most, if I saw a guy, it was somebody working for the Buccaneers.
Okay.
It was like one of the cheer squads, or somebody running a booth, or there's a lot of guys out there sort of taking care, because there's a lot of people packed into an area, and I'll get to that. But there was a lot of people like sort of picking up trash and emptying garbage bags, and because there was food and drink and all kinds of stuff. But it was. I want you to. I'm going to set this up, and I want you to tell what happened to you. I think it's a funny story. So, as we sort of talked about, you talked about in the beginning, is we're trying to show the Buccaneers about how serious we are about covering the team, and and also sort of a thank you for giving us those 2 days of credentialed media during training camp. That we sort of threw the idea around, like, what's our next step, and we talked about it, and we decided that maybe we should ask for credentials for events like this, like the Women in Red. And I'm on Twitter, and I'm a Buccaneers communication, which you should follow, by the way, everybody out there. Tweet came out, and you hit the link, and it was about this Junior Buccaneer thing, which we'll talk about, next podcast. And I was like, okay, here's a perfect situation. So at the bottom of the little blurb, the little press release, it said, if you're not credentialed and you want to go RSVP, and it was Alan, our guy Alan, who we talked about 100 times on the pod. So I clicked the link and I emailed him. I'm like, hey, this is Douglas from the Petercast. We're very interested in covering this Junior Buccaneers event. Please consider this our formal request for media credentials. Thank you in advance. And then it sent it off. And then I get back. I also tried to sneak in the practice. I was like, well, since I'm there already, it'd be cool if I could also cover and I get the email back from Alan. He goes, you are cleared for the Junior Buccaneers event. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, that's fine. And then it was attached to Brooke. Remember Brooke? She was the one who handed us our press credentials. So it was attached to there, and she was like a little, hey, come get your credentials. If I'm not there, call me this number and we'll take care of it. So then I tell you about it, and then you're like, funny enough, because I just got an email from Alan saying we can cover the Women of Red event. And this is like 2:00, and the Women of Red event's that night, and it starts at 5.
Right.
5.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
Yeah. So I had emailed Alan. I mean, very similar to what you had just did. I said, hey, listen, this is the type of event we'd like to cover. Is there any way that we could get, that we could get in this press? I'm not really sure what that looks like. A lot of it, honestly, was just because it was Women in Red walkthrough. So in my head, this was going to look a lot like that thing that I went to, 2 weeks ago. And I just remember there was like nobody media coverage wise there for that event. So, honestly, I thought we'd be the only ones there. I didn't get the email back till a little bit later in the day. And, obviously I'm in Jacksonville, so I'm, 3.5 hours away, but I got the email and I was with my kids at the dentist office, so I couldn't leave right away. And I had to wait till I got home and I looked at my wife and I said,
I called your kids an Uber. I'll see you later.
Right.
Daddy's going to Tampa.
Right. Because actually I looked at her, I was like, I can't call you guys an Uber because she was there too, right? It's like, I can't call you guys an Uber to go home from the dentist office, can I? And she went, no. And I said, okay. But she understood, because Jason Light was going to be a part of this event, and there were some things that he wanted to say that was very different from what Shelton Quarles. So I certainly wanted to be able to hear that and those things. So I got in the car, and I was like an hour down the road, like on my way, fighting through traffic, trying to get down there. And, I was going to be a little bit late. I was supposed to be there like, 6:30 or something like that. And about an hour into it, I hit some construction. Now, they've been doing construction on this road at least a year. They did it all last season. But at this point, they actually got to a spot where they detoured the road, and it wasn't on the map originally. And the way the detour was working, then it was like a parking lot down to a single lane kind of a deal. So, by the time I figured it all out, it was going to be like 8:30 before I got down there, and it just wasn't worth it. So unfortunately, I had to turn around and come home, and I was kind of bummed because I really wanted to be down there and get to hear it. So I am sitting here kind of in the seat of everyone at home, everyone who's listening to this podcast saying, Ren, tell me about the event. Like, what was this whole thing about? And what did you hear? What did you see from a fan perspective? Because certainly this is a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan podcast. We also want to cover the team. That is 95% of what we do, but there is the fan experience that we want to talk about as well. So, man, the floor is yours. I'd like to know what happened.
It was a really cool event. For those of you who have been to training camp or have seen the indoor facility on TV or on Buccaneers.com, they have built a patio on the west side of the indoor facility. On the right side, sort of a driveway, they can pull in delivery trucks and whatever they need to do. But on the right side, there's this nice concrete patio, and that's how the VIPs go in, and the media interest is over there and things like that. And they decked that out like it was some type of festival. I mean, there was something like every square inch. One, it was like 5 o'clock and it was overcast already, so it wasn't desperately hot. They had all the rah-rah guys out there. They had people dressed up in pirate suits. The cheerleaders were out there. But they had, like, the pirate ship there pumping tunes out with a DJ on it. You got to work the jugs machine.
Oh, yeah?
Like, you could work the jugs machine and pump a ball through, and you're trying to hit a target down the field. The Lombardi Trophy was out there with a Super Bowl ring.
Nice.
You could go take your picture with that.
Mm-hmm.
They had a
Whose ring was it? Do you know?
I didn't go look at it. I didn't participate in anything.
Okay.
Because, like I said before, I sort of opened up the story with, like, I was definitely a fish out of water here.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anytime that sort of somebody gave me the stink eye, because I did get the stink eye every once in a while, I would just be like, I hold my media pass up. I'm like, I'm media. Like, I'm not trying to ruin your fun. like I realize that I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm just covering. I'm just trying to give some exposure to this.
You just described, by the way, my everyday life as a stay-at-home dad. Whenever I'm, out at the park and there's just a bunch of moms there or something like that. So I get it.
Yeah. What are you doing here? I'm sorry. My wife's at work. What do you want me to do? So, and then when you walked in, they're offering raffle tickets, and I didn't take any. They're like, here's some tickets. I'm like, I don't want them. And they're like, you don't want any prizes? And I'm like, no. Like, if I won, I would feel bad. I'm like, no, I don't want any prizes. So, and then there was like 9 or 10 boxes that you could stuff your raffle tickets in, and they were really cool prizes, and I'll get to that. They had the booth with the helmets, like I talked about before. They had 3 food trucks giving out free samples of stuff.
That's cool.
Like little 3-inch sandwiches, and then I think there was somebody doing like a poke dish. The big ice coolers of water everywhere. Tables and chairs all set up so you could sit down and enjoy your food. They had mock lockers set up, but you could walk up and put on like the shoulder pads, and you could put on the helmet, and you could put on the jersey.
That's cool.
They had life-size mannequins all decked out in their uniform. One side was Mike Evans, the other side was Joe McCoy. They had places where Coca-Cola was doing something about a picture. I'm not really sure. I could never really guess what it was, but they had a couple photo booths, where you could put certain props with the Buccaneers background on it, where you could put on, put the Gerald McCoy head or the Training Camp 2008 or Women in Red. They had a Meet the Rookie booth, which had sort of like all their player cards and their stats and like size, weight, and all their college stats there. And that was being manned by scouts. So you could go up and ask them questions. I don't know who was in there this year, but last year I ran into Carmen. Remember, Carmen Vitale, our new favorite Buck employee follow on Twitter. She said last year Spytek and Greenberg were over there, like answering questions. Okay. So I mean, how great would that be? And then inside they had all these events set up, like the 20-yard dash, kick a field goal, run around with the parachute on your back, the vert jump. You could just toss the ball back and forth. And there was this really cool moment, which I caught on Twitter. The Bucs intern defensive line coach, Mickey Grace, the lady, she was tossing a ball with this little girl like dressed in a Buccaneers cheerleader outfit, and the little girl asked her for her autograph.
Oh,
yeah, and it was just like it's like, hey, it's like, it's like, so this is sort of that for me encompassed what this whole event was about. And Women of Red is basically the Buccaneers showing their appreciation for the female fans, and having this event for them, letting them come and ask questions and find out more about the Buccaneers. Because when Casey Phillips opened up the speaking part, she said that I'm not sure if she said the NFL or the Buccaneers, but she said it was like over. I'm not sure this is true. I must have misheard it, but I thought she said over 50% of the fans in the NFL are women, or maybe 50% of the Buccaneers were women. Which I was like, huh, really? But I'm not here to pick it apart because, like, honestly, it was a really cool and fun event, and a lot of things I wish I could have done. Like, I really wanted to go try to kick a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to try the vert jump. And they had the ladder, the foldable ladders out there where you chop step inside the little squares back and forth and things like that. But also, when you did that, and if you were leading, they put your name up on these TV screens, and you were like on the leaderboard, and they were giving away prizes for like fastest 20-yard dash, highest vert, farthest broad jump. I don't know. I'm not really sure how the field goals work.
What kind of prizes were they? Do you know?
I'll get to that. Like, okay, so now it's time to come inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all, like, everyone's out there, and people are going to sit in the stands, and Casey comes out, and so Jason Light comes out, and this is a Q&A with Jason Light.
Mm-hmm.
And these were prep questions. I saw Jason looking at them with Casey over on the side like 10 minutes earlier. And to be honest, it wasn't anything riveting. It was sort of, hey, talk about the free agents. Hey, talk about the draft picks. Hey, how are we going to do this year? Those kind of stuff. The only thing that I picked up out of that was when he talked about Ronald Jones during the draft picks. He goes, we think he's doing really well around here, no matter what the media or Twitter says. That's what he said. And I was like, yikes. I'm like, all right. I'm like, okay. All right, Jason. Prove it. No,
Where's that press conference? I want to ask you about that, Jay.
Yeah. But, and then they went into these prizes, and this is where it got a little dicey. And I think the Bucks messed up, and I hope they don't. I don't know. Like, this is their fourth year, and I don't know if they've always done this, but I think this was unfair to tell you the truth. These prizes were like, first off, they got this gift basket, like it's Buccaneer gift basket that was wrapped in plastic. It looked like $150 gift basket you get from
like
Bed
each
Bath
woman,
Beyond.
Or like each
prize.
person that was there. Oh, each prize. Okay.
Each prize, but then attached to it was like, hey, you get this gift basket, but you also get like 4 sweet tickets to the Cleveland Browns game, or you get this gift basket and you get 4 tickets to the Pittsburgh game, plus you get to go on the field before the game with field passes during, the Tony, they call it Tony Dunn. And all these packages were like really cool. And at this point I'm going, I get why you can't have an event like this for guys. I forgot to mention there's free beer by Bud Light.
Okay.
So I get why you can't have this event for guys of all these guys sing, back to their glory days, pulling their hamstring, trying to do the 20-yard dash and the vert and the field goal kick, and then doing free beer. But prizes, I was kind of like, I'm like, those are cool prizes, man.
Yeah.
I was a little, but I understand, it was just kind of fleeting in my head. I'm like, oh man, that stinks. But okay, this is the Women in Red event. That's the way they want to do it. It's the way they want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So then they get to the prizes for the competition. Okay. Like they had the raffle prizes. Now they get to the prizes of the competition, which were autographed footballs. And it's like, all right, the winner of the 20-yard dash is blah, blah, blah. And she comes down and grabs it, and everyone claps. They go, the winner for the field goal, we have a tie. And they name the names, and a dude gets out there.
Yeah.
One of the name was a guy.
Uh-huh.
And then a lady got out there, and they kind of look at each other, and Jason Light handed the football to the lady. And then they just sort of like, sorry, buddy, like Women in Red event, go sit down.
They did?
Yeah. So, I mean, they didn't, they only had like a football for each prize. So he basically didn't get one. And the next one's for the jump.
Uh-huh.
And it's a dude. A guy won it. And everybody became instant friends in the stands. Like, everyone started look to the right, started whispering. You hear this like mumbled crowd, like what's going on here? This is the Women of Red event. Like, why is this dude? Like, first off, why is he even allowed to compete? And like, why are they giving him?
Right.
So and people are starting mumbling, and then the next one was a vert, and another guy won.
Wow.
And they started booing him.
So,
and then no way, they started booing him as he's walking up to get it. 3,000 ladies, boo. Then they start this shit, women.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, you screwed this up so bad. But the chant died down very quickly after that. And and a good time was had by all. And that's sort of when they started the walkthrough. But to finish up this story, like I was, I was using the restroom and I was coming out. There was these ladies kind of standing there, and they saw my badge. They thought like my press credentials, and they thought like I worked for the Bucks. So they started asking me these questions, and I'm like, I don't work for the Bucks, ladies. I had my Petercast shirt on. I look for, like I'm a fan podcast. They're okay. Like, oh, I've heard of that. I saw you guys advertise, and I'm like, well, we don't advertise. So, I mean, it could have been somebody else. Like, we're a fan podcast. She's like, okay, and then she goes, hey, tell me something. She goes, why do guys here? Why do they let them compete, and why do they let them win prizes? And I was like. And I told her, I'm like, well, one, if they don't want men here, just say it. Like you got an email, right? Like if you send out the email and you want to make it women only, then just say women only. Like it was less than 5% guys there. I would say closer to 2%. So there's that. And if you're going to let the guys there, I think they should be allowed to do these drills because I mean. At one point or another, if you're into sports at all, like you thought a viable option was to play professional football.
Sure.
Right. And if you could get out there with your favorite, be on the field with your favorite team and be able to do a 20-yard dash or a vert out on the field or kick a field goal through the same goalpost that your team kicks them through, I think you should be able to do that. Now, do I think you should be able to win? Absolutely not. Like it doesn't like you can post your time and tell your friends and tweet out on Facebook that you got to do it and what you did, but to actually win the event at the Women of Red, I'm like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah,
like, I just don't.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say because I remember seeing some of these the leaderboards that you said that they'd post up their names and stuff, and I was like, wow, there's some women there, but there's a lot of dudes, like just by name, like sounds like there's a lot of dudes there that was doing this, which would lend to my impression that there was a lot more guys there. Like we talked about earlier. I would
probably say only about 20% of the women participated in these events.
Okay.
I mean, and I don't think, and I mean, it was really weird. Like half the women showed up like they were just coming from the gym, like in yoga pants and
right.
Like.
Because by the way, that's what the email said. It said we encourage you to wear workout gear.
Okay, so a lot of them did, and the other half were like they were going to a game on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah.
Like. A jersey, but like nice pants, or some a nice pair of shorts. There were plenty of women there in heels. Some women, and I don't know if like it was more of a business thing or they're VIPs, but some women were dressed like they just came out of a law firm. So it was all sort of this mixture. I don't remember how I was going with that. Oh, but yeah. And so really only about 20% of the women, but that's about 300 women or about 400 women, I would say, that actually did this.
That's quite a bit, yeah.
Exactly. I don't want to make it sound like no one participated, but it was a really cool event. It was like I said, I was a little jelly that, there's not an event, and I don't want to be a men's only event, but there's not an event where it's not shunned upon where guys can go.
Yeah.
Maybe cut out the free beer. And I don't know if you should actually get a bunch of dudes out there trying to relive their high school days doing unless you make them sign a waiver, and that would like take forever. So maybe just toss the football around type of deal.
I mean they had all that stuff out. I remember at training camp earlier this year. I remember going into the indoor facility and they had all that stuff set up before the players came in for the second half of practice. But
that was for kids.
Right. But I'm just saying they've had this stuff set up. Like, they could have this at other events. But I'm with you on listen, if there's a guy there and he wants to go up and do a jump and see what he can get, okay, fine. If he wants to go see what his 40-yard dash is, fine. But, if it's supposed to be a women in red event, let him go do it, but don't post his time.
Exactly.
And don't let them. It would just seem to me to make sense because if this is supposed to be about the women, that's fine. I have in my job I have frequently found myself at women's events, and even working there sometimes. Women want to be there for their event. And it's for them, and
some of them will definitely let you know that you are intruding.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're like, and at the time I'd be like, I'm actually here to make this event happen for you. So
I actually had to get up and move in the stands.
Yeah.
Because when I saw the first guy, the two people came up for the field goal and they gave it to the lady, rightfully so, and they went and sat down. And then when they announced the broad jump and a guy got up, I actually laughed out loud because I was like, oh, and I wasn't laughing.
You say, this is terrible.
And I wasn't laughing like, oh my God, like no women could beat that guy. I was laughing like, this is a PR nightmare right now. Like the Buccaneers have just stepped in this.
Right.
And
start looking around for Nelson and Allen and be like, what are you guys thinking right now?
Like, this is going to go south quick.
Right.
And it did. I mean, it didn't, like, I don't want to make it sound like the whole thing melted down, but there was a good, 35 to a minute and a half where there wasn't a lot of happy people in the stands.
Sure.
And and when I realized I laughed and I sort of got, side eyes from people in front of me and stuff. I'm like, oh, press conference time. I think I said out loud and invested with my media badge and then went and sat with the media guys. Oh, and I forgot to tell you this. Well, I haven't got to it yet, but, so after that, they went into their walkthrough, which is the same exact thing that you saw, you saw when you went,
Very boring, very dry.
You can't hear anything that's going on. They don't throw the ball. They don't kick the ball. They just sort of walk through.
Right. And for anyone who didn't hear, a couple episodes ago, we talked about this. But what they do at the walkthrough is basically they go out, they practice in the morning, then they go back and they watch all the game film, and they tell the players, here's everything you did wrong. And the idea of the walkthrough is this is where they come back and they basically try to fix what went wrong. Like, okay,
no helmets, no shoulder pads.
Yeah. They're in jeans and
they're not
ball caps.
Jeans.
Not jeans, but you know what I mean. Like they've got their jerseys on, but it's shorts.
Yeah.
Like it's close to street clothes as you're going to get. So, but it's really just for kind of walking through those things that they either messed up earlier or something like that. So, let me ask you, let's make this about football for just a minute. Was there anything from the walkthrough that kind of as you were watching, not trying to give away anything that we're not supposed to give away, but was there anything that you kind of picked up on, anything that stood out to you or bits of?
There's actually, a few things that I saw, and I'll go through these quickly because they're not too deep, but I think, if I found them interesting enough to write it down, then maybe you'll be interested in it. They had Sean Wilson returning kickoffs and punts when they were doing their walkthrough. They had Bernard Reedy back there as well, but it looked, once again, it kind of looked like Wilson was sort of doing all the work. Justin Watson, who's in that 5th/6th wide receiver battle, he was the only offensive player that was on punt return team. Like, it was all red jerseys, and then Justin Watson out there. So they're giving this guy a chance to see what he can do and all. They're trying to make him make the team is what they're doing. They're like, you're going to play punt coverage, you're going to play punt return, you're going to play kickoff coverage, you're going to do everything. So there's a reason for you to make this team. And at one point I look over and Brian Anger and Catanzaro and Ferris, the long snapper, were actually laying on the ground, like just leaning against the padding on the far side, like just
taking a nap.
Have nothing to do whatsoever.
Wow. Why are we here?
So they start. They get behind the offense and they start, from like the 15-yard line, start throwing the ball at the crossbar.
Okay.
Who can hit the crossbar? Who can hit the crossbar? And at one point, Ryan Jensen, whether the twos are in there doing their walkthrough, turns around. He's like, you can see him like nodding, like, "Hey, throw me the ball. Hey, let me take a shot at it." And he drilled it from like 20 yards away, like first try, bing, and he just like kind of like shrugged his shoulders. And he's like, "You guys aren't athletes," and walked back to the side. But Catanzaro, man, he was dinging him off the pipes, like I don't think I saw, and I didn't watch it the whole time, but I don't think I saw Anger or Ferris hit the pipes at all. At one time, they were doing a 3-man like shag team, and what I mean by that, they went to like the 20-yard line, but they went all the way to the far sideline, and they were bombing it from the far sideline to try at the crossbar, and they had one guy behind the crossbar shagging the balls, who was then firing it to the guy that was in the middle, and then who was giving it to the guy all the way on the sidelines. So they actually set up this train, and they like one guy would take 3 shots out of it, and they just rotate. Then one guy would take 3 shots at it, just rotate. But it got to the point where like, hey, let's get more efficient about this guy. It's like, you catch him, throw him to me, and I'll throw him to him. He throws it, and we'll just rotate. So to get back to sort of serious stuff, I already told you Lidke was the one who was filled in for Donovan Smith, and Donovan Smith was not there. I didn't see him today at practice, and I went and looked twice for him last night. I actually got in a little trouble with Alan about this. You raised your eyebrows. Brent's like, what did you do, Brent? Did you just screw up So after I excused myself from the stands for laughing out loud, all the media people were sort of huddled over in the end zone by the VIP entrance, and they're just chit-chatting and talking. And so I go over there, and this is where I'm taking most of the notes, and I'm looking for Donovan Smith. And I'm looking for him. I'm creeping like more and more down towards the players, like back of the end zone, down towards where the players are, sort of. And I'm probably like 3/4 of the way there, and I hear this, Doug. I turn around, it's Alan. He's like waving me back. He's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. He's like, and he goes, just try to blend in, will you? He's like, and I'm like, yeah, man, sorry. I didn't tell him what I was doing. I'm like, yeah, my bad, sorry. But today when I was, this will make you feel better. When I was covering the Junior Bucks program, I looked at him and I go, man, this is fun to watch, and we'll get to why it was. And he goes, yeah. And I go, thanks for letting us cover this. And this is the first time he ever thanked us. He was like, no, it was like, thanks for you guys for covering it and getting the word out and spreading it. So no hard feelings from the night before,
right, cool.
where I went rogue.
Right. Well, I gotta be honest. Listening to some of the stories that we've heard out of the guys who are permanently credentialed, I got to imagine that some of the stuff they've had to rein in, that was not. That didn't rank high on their list.
Exactly. But it was, it was kind of like, for us, there's a lot at stake here, so we want to dot our I's and cross our T's.
Right.
And I didn't even realize what I was like, where I was, or what I was doing. And he's just like, gave the old throw.
Hey, that's too far.
Hey, don't do that, man.
Yeah.
Don't come on, man. Like, you're making me look bad, bro. Like, get back over here with the other schlubs.
Right.
Like, all right, my bad. And there's a few things to finish up. Charles Sims didn't have a brace on, so he actually he might be playing against Detroit. That's, like I said, I still don't think he makes a team. And yeah, that was really it. Let's see. I have something about Tandy, but that changed today. It was about the rotation on defense. Remember when I talked about when the Buccaneers were doing goal line defense? Mm-hmm. And I said Nigel Harris came in as the 4th linebacker. Mm-hmm. Well, now that Bond isn't injured, Bond was in there.
Okay.
So that bodes well for him for that 5th linebacker spot.
Okay.
So there's a little nugget there. And I guess just to sort of round this out with a story, after practice, as you well know, the players come over and start signing, autographs, right? Mm-hmm. And as you've seen in previous camps and this year as well, that they have these buckets full of Sharpies, mm-hmm. and the player just comes over and picks one and goes and signs. Well, since they're prepping for this, setting up all these displays and everything outside. Mm-hmm. They blow the whistle and the Bucks walk over to the rope to start signing, and all of them start turning around looking at the office people like, where's our pens? Like, they didn't have any. Oh. Someone forgot to bring all the Sharpies over. So, oops. But honestly, it really didn't matter. Yeah. Because this was something else I noticed. There wasn't a lot of memorabilia. it was selfie time is what it was.
Right.
Like
Right.
most of the women didn't want to get their shirt signed, didn't bring footballs or whatever.
Mhm.
What they wanted was a selfie with
Their autograph is a selfie.
yes, and
Right.
and they were clicking everywhere. But yeah, so that put a button. That puts a button. It was a really cool event.
All right, very good. Well, Ren, I think with that is going to wrap up this episode. That is officially going to shut down Ren's Training Camp Journal for the 2018 season. Ren, with that, man, I guess kind of as usual, any final thoughts on this whole thing, and where can people out there find you on the internet?
It was a fun ride, and I'm glad it's over. That's all I have to say.
Buckle in for regular season now, Ren.
Buckle in, yeah. Here we go. Let's buckle in. Well, I don't have to get up super early and leave my house all the time, so
There
that's
you go.
cool. Best way to find me on the internet is Twitter. I love Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time. At Rendax, REN_DAXT. And thank you to all the people that have followed me since sort of this Ren Training Camp Journal started. I've picked up I think right at 100 followers.
Nice.
And just like this 2.5 week period of time. So thank you very much. And I'll see you on the Twitterverse. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
There you go. I was waiting. If you guys want to get in touch with me, I am at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias. And if you want to get in touch with us at the show, you can find us on Twitter at ThePewterCast, Facebook.com/ThePewterCast, or shoot us an email to ThePewterCast@gmail.com. We do respond to all forms of feedback. It's one of the more fun aspects of being a part of this Bucks fan community. Also, don't forget, if you want to join the show, you want to support the show, look great doing it, you can find out some information over at patreon.com/ThePewterCast. You get all the information for that over there. Well, Ren, from here, we're kind of we're moving into it. We'll have a little bit of an instant cast show. It won't be a call-in show this time. So you guys be on the lookout for that after the Lions game coming up here on Friday. And then we'll move into kind of some of our regular season stuff as we turn the corner. We're just 2.5 weeks, Ren. 2.5 weeks from the season opener in New Orleans. I cannot wait. Football is back. And, man, at this point, I'm just ready for it to start counting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It'll be good to watch, this third preseason game. It'll be fun because you might even get to see Jameis into the third quarter, depending on how they work it. But I think pretty much when this clock, hits triple zeros after this game, it's gonna be a long 2 weeks, man.
Mm-hmm. I saw, not to delay the show anymore, but I did see that somebody had said when Tom Brady took his suspension, they actually played him quite a bit in the fourth preseason game. I guess
they did.
So there's some speculation they may or may not do that with Jameis. We'll talk about that on a future episode. But until then, guys, we'll close out the show as always. Go Bucks.
Shiver my timbers, shiver my soul. Yo ho heave ho. There are men whose hearts are as black as coal. Yo ho heave ho.
And they sailed their ship across the ocean blue. A bloodthirsty captain and a cutthroat crew.
It's as dark a tale as was ever told of the lust for treasure and the love of gold. Shiver my timbers, shiver my sides. Yo ho heave ho. There are hundreds as strong as the wind and tides. Yo ho heave ho.
And those buccaneers drowned their sins in rum. The devil himself would have to call them scum.
Every man on board would have killed his mate for a bag of guineas or a piece of egg. A piece of egg.
A piece of egg.
'Hula waka, something not right. Many wicked icky things gonna happen tonight. Hula waka, sail up and beware.
Bring the money in the ground, there's murder in the air.
Murder in the air. One more time now. Shiver my timbers, shiver my bones. Yo ho heave ho. There are secrets that sleep with old Davy Jones. Yo ho heave ho.
When the mainsail set and the anchors lover's way. There's no turning back from any course that's laid.
And when free, I'd rather sail the sea. You can bet your boots that it's free.
Shiver my timbers, shiver my